The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail.
For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge.
Monday's event brings with it a mix of tradition, reflection, and political analysis. To break down why this inauguration is so significant is Michael Koncewicz, adjunct of assistant professor of public service at NYU. Michael, thank you so much for being here today. All right, so what is going to make this one different from Trump's first inauguration? We know that it's going to be moved inside. That's a big deal. Tell us about it.
Well, it's the first inauguration since 1985, Reagan's second inauguration to be moved inside. Trump, as many have noticed, is the first president to get a second non-consecutive term since Grover Cleveland, so he's the second president to do that. But most importantly, it's worth acknowledging that it comes 4 years after January 6th. Right. We love to, presidential historians love to talk about presidential norms. Trump not only surviving January 6th, where he not only denied the results of the 2020 election, attempted to reverse the results, but also helped inspire an insurrection, an attempted insurrection on January 6th. The fact that he not only survived, but came back from that and won another term 4 years later, that's establishing a new norm in American presidential history that shows what exactly is possible in 2025.
Yeah, and speaking about all of looking at this in a historical realm, going back, as you mentioned, you talked about that you are a presidential historian and you've spent a lot of time studying Nixon as well. So just as we take a look at our lineage, if we take a look at all the presidents that we've watched, you know, how do you think this is going to line up with where we've been in the past in terms of, I mean, they're all significant, right? But being indoors, maybe it's a security thing too. Let's talk about just how it lines up.
Yeah, so with a presidential inaugural address, there's usually two goals. And those goals are often in tension with one another. One, it's to unify the country or promote a message of unity. And two is to find ways to advance your agenda without going into the kind of boring nitty-gritty details of policy.
Right.
Every single speech tries to do that. I tell my students when they use these speeches as primary sources, you know, from 100 years ago, to look, what is the president trying to sell to the American people? And one is a message of unity, but two is to try to actually transform the country. President Trump's first inaugural address tried to do that. I would argue, and most people I think would argue, that it tried to do more of the second thing. There's some rhetoric surrounding unity in that speech. I think it's easy to forget that. But what most people forget, most people remember about that speech is the use of the phrase American carnage, and that he was the person that could actually save us from American carnage. He brings up immigration and crime and America first. And so that inaugural address was not unprecedented, but fairly unique in terms of how heavy-handed it was in promoting his agenda.
How long are these addresses typically, and how many people are involved in helping to write them?
That's a good question. It varies from president to president. Typically, especially in the modern era, we're looking at 15 to 25 minutes. I think both Trump and Biden were around that, were in that range. But who the president selects to actually help draft the speech, like who's actually in the room when they're coming up with these speeches, really matters. Trump's first inaugural address, most reports suggest that it was Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller. And that's a choice.
Right.
He's not relying on comparatively more moderate members or people who are interested in more kind of diplomatic, normal rhetoric. He chose firebrands to write his first inaugural address. I suspect we'll see something similar for his second inaugural address, but we will see.
Yeah, I bet you're right. And we also want to mention that we're watching live pictures right now in Washington, D.C. We have a cameraman that's kind of weaving in and out of this protest that's happening right now in Washington, D.C., just 2 days ahead of the inauguration. We will continue to keep our cameras there and monitoring it as well. Presidential historian Michael Konzowicz, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you coming in on short notice.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.